So before giving some tools on how we might deal with stress in this difficult time, I thought I would just start with a definition of what stress actually is. Stress can be defined as a biological and psychological response produced when encountering a threat we don't have the resources to deal with. The American Psychological Association states that there's three kinds of stress. There's acute stress, episodic stress, and chronic stress. And there are many other ways we can also divide stress or categorize stress. There's psychological stress, which might be produced by an illness, an injury, lifestyle, noise, living conditions. Perceptual and emotional stress, which is stresses that are when we have an emotional response to a situation. And then there's imaginary stress, which can kind of be a projection or a situation which we invent or exaggerate in our own minds, which is not actually present, but which we make into a big deal for ourselves. We can also talk about stress in terms of routine stresses, such as work, school, family, daily responsibilities, etc. Negative change stress, which could be examples of would be losing your job, divorce, illness, etc. And then traumatic stresses such as war, accidents, natural disasters, and of course right now the COVID-19 virus. And it should also be stated that stress is not always a negative thing. Stress can also help us to deal with acute situations, fight or flight situations where we need to protect ourselves or respond with great speed to different kinds of situations. It can help with cognitive acuity, it can help with our hearing, our vision, and other sense perceptions. But what we really want to focus on today is chronic stress and the ways it negatively affects our nervous system and our immune system. This is the kind of stress that causes so much problems in our current society in terms of illness, fatigue, depression, anxiety, worry, sleep disorders, heart disease, diabetes, and just general immune system weakening. So today we want to share with you some tools that have been helpful for ourselves and our patients in dealing with stress. These tools that we're presenting today are by no means exhaustive. There are many, many tools out there. We're just presenting 5 today. You may find just one of them helpful, and that's perfectly fine. We're not trying to suggest that you need to do all of these different tools or use all these different tools, but they're ones that we've found to be helpful, and perhaps you will also. So with that, Karla is going to present the first tool.
So first of all, I just want you to get here and arrive. Just feel the cushion that's underneath your bottom. Feel your feet on the floor. And I just want to take you through an experience, a direct experience without engaging your thinking mind. So just go inside and imagine a stressful situation. So it might be something that's really current for you right now. It might be being afraid that you're not going to have enough income because of the virus, or there's so many different things that you could pick. So just pick one and really bring it into your system. So feel it, think about it. If it's a person that you're upset at, or anything that will help you engage this feeling of worry or distress or anger, or anything that brings up that difficulty and also engages that fight, flight, or freeze part of your nervous system. So just really feel that. And what I'd like you to do is, once you get it into your thinking mind and you have an image of this, then go and explore into your body. How do your feet feel? How do your legs feel while you have this emotion engaged in your system? Check your heart rate. Check your breath. Notice where the energy is in your body. Is it up in your chest or your head? Or is it down in your legs, in your feet? Just be really curious and keep fueling this idea of being upset. Really let it let it rip. Let it go for it. Just really, really feel it. And just notice all of the parts of your body that are affected by having this emotion engaged. And now, what I'd like you to do is do the exact opposite. Engage an image or a situation or a person in your thoughts, in your memory, it might be something current too. There might be gratitude, but that are more on the positive realm. So really, really feel what it feels like to be loved, to feel safe, to feel confident. You got things handled. How do your feet feel? What happens to the energy in your body from going from a stressed place and now going into a more relaxed and calm and confident, feeling loved place? Just take a few minutes and really picture. You could picture being at the beach or being in nature, being in the kitchen of someone that loves you and is fixing you a wonderful meal. Whatever helps you feel relaxed and calm, centered. Notice your heart rate. Notice your breath. And definitely notice where your energy is. Okay, so coming back from that, the reason that I had you do this is the first thing we need to be able to do is to distinguish between what part of our nervous system we're in. And the part where we're revved up, that first one, you could feel what that did to you, right? Usually the energy's up higher, it comes up into the head. Sometimes it even feels like it's going to explode out the top if you're overwhelmed. Things tighten up, right? The blood constriction. It has a very physiological effect on us. And when we're relaxed and we feel confident, that too has a physiological response. So the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, has two branches. And one is the parasympathetic, and that is like having the brakes on, right? So it slows things down, the parasympathetic. It allows you to breathe. It allows you to digest. It allows you to restore your system. And this is the part of the nervous system that we want to hang out in most of the time. And then the sympathetic nervous system is the fight, flight, or freeze. So those are the three things that happen, is when we perceive any kind of danger, whether, like Rik was saying, whether it's perceived, whether it's actually happening, whether we've imagined it all, it still has a physiological effect on our nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system will get your adrenals going, get that adrenaline going. The cortisol goes really high. The blood goes away from your digestive system because it goes out into the muscles so that you can run or fight if you need to do that. The two are very different, and they're not all or nothing. They're not, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic balance each other. And we want to be in the parasympathetic most of the time. And we need the sympathetic. We need it. We don't want to get rid of it. But we only want to use it when we really need it. And the statistics are now that we're in it like 80% of the time instead of vice versa. And that's why we're having a lot of health issues because of stress. So these are the tools that we're sharing with you today, is really how to move from that fight, flight, or freeze sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic, which is the rest, digest, and restore. Okay? And even if you move the needle just a little bit, it's going to be helpful. So the first one, I've already done a little bit with you, and it's the opposites, working with opposites. And it's not that we want to get rid of disturbing emotions or anxiety or these things or deadlines for our job, whatever it is that creates us to get into the fight, flight, or freeze. we don't want to ignore them. We're not like, going to be Pollyanna and just try to get into the parasympathetic and stay there all the time. We don't want to be la la land. But what we need to do is be able to move smoothly back and forth between the two. And that's what using opposites allows you to practice, is being able to move smoothly from one state to another. And that's where we get into big trouble, is we swing to one state and we stay there. And we stay there and we stay there. And it creates a lot of physiological and emotional problems. So the more we can swing back and forth and have that agility, the healthier we're going to be, both emotionally and physically. So let's go ahead and do the opposites practice. And we're going to do a very similar thing, but I'll show you how you can use it moment to moment in just a flash. And that also brings me to the point is you need to practice all of these tools, when you're in a more relaxed place where you actually are, like going through a field of grass. If you haven't walked it, it's just going to be a field of grass. But if you've walked it, it creates a trail. So what we want to do is create a trail to these tools. And like Rik was saying, we're not expecting you to use all 5 of these, but as you experience these 5, one of them might go, yeah, that really helped me. And we're going to give you some resources so that if you want to dive deeper into each of these tools, then you can go and look more into them. We're just giving you, it's a taster. We're doing a taster today so that you can see which tools might be something that would work for you. So go ahead and come back into yourself. Take a couple deep breaths. Feel your feet on the ground. Let's start with your feeling really good feeling. So you can either engage the same image that you had before or a new one, anything that helps you feel calm, confident, relaxed. And you can even imagine putting the energy down into your lower body. Because when the energy is in our feet, in our legs, our hips, it helps us calm down too. And it helps switch that nervous system. So just let yourself feel that state of calm and relaxed. Bring up an image if you need to of nature or a person that you love and that loves you. And then we're going to swing over into feeling upset. Just really bring in that image. Just really, really bring it in. Notice where you feel it. Does the energy go up into your chest and your head? Does your heart rate go up? So now what you do is you go back and forth, just like a breath, just like inhaling and exhaling. We're going to go to 1, which is the feeling really good, feeling confident. You can even pick a part of your body maybe that is changing. You could feel your feet during this time. And then you swing back into the being upset, and maybe that would bring you back up to your chest or some other part of your body. But however you can swing back and forth between these two emotions, let yourself, like I said, just like a breath, feeling one, then feeling the other, then feeling one, then feeling the other. And this is the trick of using opposites. Now let yourself expand out so that both can be there. The upset and the feeling good and confident and loved. Let them both be there. And when you're first learning it, sometimes you need to put the upset in one hand and the feeling good in the other hand and letting yourself go back and forth and then feeling the two. But what often happens is there's a third image that arises. And when I do this, a lot of times the upset one will be held by the confident one of me. But there's been so many different visuals that come up with that third one for me. So let yourself keep going back and forth and then expand out and let both be there. Broadens your perspective, gives you a new perspective. It's not pushing away the negative. It's giving it attention, and it's also giving attention to the positive and letting them both be there. So, how would you use that in your daily life? One of the things that I've been using it for in this time of being at home a lot is that sense of feeling like, oh, I got to get more stuff done. I got to get more stuff done. You know, and there's that anxiety of like, oh, I can't do, you know, what I need to do, or I can't go to work. I can't. And so I'll feel that, oh, and it's usually in my chest, so I can really feel it. And then I go to the place of, okay, I'm taken care of. I have a house. I have a place to shelter in. I've got food. I've got toilet paper. I've got what I need. And then move back and forth to that between the two. So that would be one example. A more immediate one would be maybe being in traffic and somebody cuts you off and you're just like, oh, you know, and you feel that, and that cues you into remembering, oh, I can invite in the opposite. Like, oh man, I hope that person is going to be able to get to where he needs to go because he's obviously in a big hurry, you know, or just some compassion or and then letting yourself feel both of those and letting them go back and forth. And you can do it in a really quick time. So that's the first tool, is using opposites. And I learned this from doing the training with Richard Miller with iRest, integrative restoration. And this is just one small part of the techniques that he teaches on working with difficult emotions and trauma. And it's one of the tools that I learned from iRest that has been extremely useful in my life and with other people that I can help. So Rik's going to take the next tool.
So in my career as an acupuncturist and Qigong teacher, many people ask me, what are some of the points that I can use on my body to deal with different kinds of physical or emotional problems? And of course, there are many, many points one could use for a whole variety of things. So for today, I've just narrowed it down to 5 sets of points that may be helpful for stress. And the first one I'd like to show you is very simply the point between the eyebrows. This is called the yin tang or the yin palace point. It's also well known as the third eye. And you can tap or just press, rub this point. It will help to calm the spirit and relieve anxiety and insomnia, those kinds of emotions. So the point between the eyebrows can be quite helpful. Not everyone's going to respond as strongly to one point as to another, so you have to kind of choose for yourself which point might be helpful. Another point which is very famous for insomnia and anxiety is called the spirit gate point. It's a heart meridian point. So the left side is the stronger of the two, but you can do it on either wrist. So if you made a crease at your wrist, and then starting from the outside, the pinky side, you just kind of go over that bump that's right there to the inside portion of that crease and press right there. And these points are not so tiny that you'll miss it. You don't have to worry so much about getting it exactly. They're all maybe dime shape in terms of acupressure. So that's one. So we have the point between the eyebrows, this point here on the inside of the wrist, and then 3 finger widths above this wrist crease, again between the tendons on the wrist, is another point. You may know this point for motion or car sickness. You might have seen wristbands where they have a little pellet or a little protuberance of some sort attached to the wristband, and that creates pressure here on this point. People use that for motion sickness or car sickness, but it's also very good for calming the spirit and working with anxiety and insomnia. So those 3 points are all very good for anxiety of any sort. Point between the eyebrows, inside of the wrist, and 3 fingers up the wrist. Then there's another set of points called the 4 gates, which are very good for anger and just generally dispersing, harmonizing, and relaxing energy throughout the entire body. And these 4 gates, you have one on either hand. If you were to spread your thumb and index finger, you have a web that you have between those two, and then you would just squeeze that point with your thumb. This point's also very well known for headaches, particularly frontal headaches or toothache. So you may have seen it used for that as well. These are very famous acupuncture points, used very widely. So those 2 points, 2 of the 4 gates, they're kind of strong energetically. You might feel them. You can really squeeze them hard if you want to. And then kind of the corresponding points on your feet. I'm going to put my foot up on the table so you can see. So you've got your big toe and then your second toe. And again, you've got this web that you have between them. So as you had a web here, you have a web between your big toe and your second toe, excuse me. And then you would just press that point also. A lot of people find this point to be quite sensitive. And then you would do that on both sides. So by doing these 4 points and then the other foot, you help to, like I was saying, spread and harmonize the flow of energy in a very general way throughout the entire body, which can be very relaxing, particularly as regards anger and frustration. Those are 2 of the major emotions that really get people into trouble. And so these are points that are helpful for that. And then the last set of points has to do with neck and shoulder tension. Probably everyone knows how tension can lead to pain and stiffness in the neck and shoulders. So you can do these points yourself very easily just by taking, maybe I like to use my middle finger, but you can use your index finger or a combination of 2 fingers, whatever you like. And then just place them right below your occipital ridge, that occipital bone there in the back of the skull, right there in the center. Just press and hold there. And then you can kind of work your way out towards the ears, just going along the very bottom border of that bone. Just take a deep breath and press into those points. Very relaxing, good for headaches, stress, tension of any kind. And then if you like, one of the things I like to do is to go back to that middle depression and just take my hand and spread them along the occipital ridge while I lean my head back. That gets a little more pressure in there. And then make sure you get them all. You can really feel that getting in there. And then do the same thing with each one of the cervical vertebrae. You have 7 of them in your neck. So you could just, starting at that one, the first one we did would be cervical vertebra number 1, and then just working down the neck. Pressing, leaning back into that, kind of just spreading your hands. I do this every day. It really helps with my neck tension. Helps send blood to the brain. Karla was mentioning when we get stressed out or tense, energy tends to rise up in the body and form knots and congestion in the upper body and the head and neck and shoulders. So these points are all very good for that. And then in terms of your shoulders, the trapezius muscle that runs from your shoulder to your neck, if you just take your hand and place it back on that muscle, then you can use your other hand, place it on the elbow, the crook of the elbow, and just pull down with both hands, one hand on the elbow, one hand on the muscle itself, and just create a little pressure there. You can start from the neck and then just go. So it's a way you can do this yourself that's very easy. When you use both hands like this, it's very easy to get enough pressure to really be effective. You'll feel a lot more blood circulating in these areas, and then you can do it on the other side. Starting with your neck, pulling down. If you're working at a computer or a desk, it's a great thing to do in the course of the day, just to get a little bit of blood flow there, to relieve some of the tension in these muscles, because these can really lead to all kinds of problems. So then just to review one last time, It's easy to forget these points. You have your yin tang point between the eyebrows, point on the inside of the wrist crease here, and the point between the tendons on the lower forearm. These are all good for anxiety, sleeplessness, and worry. The 2 points on the hands and on the feet, good for anger, frustration, helping to move energy throughout the body and harmonize energy throughout the body in a very general way. And then these points along the neck and upper shoulders in order to relieve tension and stress in the upper shoulders.
So, and that actually leads really well into my next tool, because some of the points that he just showed you are also used in this technique. So it's tapping. And some of you may know of tapping from emotional freedom technique, EFT. And the original EFT was founded by Gary Craig, and that was in 1995. And I think he lived in Fort Bragg. And he was extremely generous with his information. He put the manual out for free. I got involved with it really early on, and I've used this technique really regularly for about 2 years. I would get into the bathtub and just tap. And every time you go through a series of tapping, then the next emotion will come up, and then you tap that one out, and then the next emotion. It was like peeling an onion. And it's been a huge benefit for me to use this technique in my emotional and physical healing too. Rik, when he had an autoimmune disorder, he used the tapping quite a bit too, with great results. Anyway, I can't say enough about it. The guy who developed it was great. And now, of course, since it's been out and people have been using it, then other people have been modifying it. And that brings me to what I've been using lately, and that is called the Faster EFT. And that was brought out by Robert G. Smith. There are, let's see, I think we'll have a PDF or something that will show these websites, and there's some really great YouTubes. There's a Faster EFT Basic Recipe by Robert Smith. There's also a really good YouTube by Jack Canfield, and that's more of the original EFT. But that one's even shorter than the original one. So at first it was really long, and you had to hum and move your eyes around and do. I mean, there was all these different things you had to do. Well, now it's gotten really streamlined. So, and the other thing that's really cool about this is that you can use the opposites with it. So I'll just show it to you really quick. What you do is you bring up an emotion or a physical pain, and you bring it into your system, just like you did with the doing the opposites. So really bring it on board, just like you did before. Whether it's something that you're angry about, or it's something you're worried about, or a difficulty you have with somebody, or actual physical pain. Like if my hip's hurting, I'll feel it, and then I'll do the tapping and then come back to it. So what you want to do is, whether it's an emotion or a physical problem, you want to feel it and then give it a number. So 10 would be the worst, 1 would be that it's hardly there. So that way our minds, they love to compare. So contrasting it, being able to figure out what it was like before you started and then after you did it, our brains like that for some reason. So they like comparing. So find an emotion or a physical pain and give it a number. So really, and bring it on, rev it up, bring whatever it is. And then you tap between. So that first acupressure point that Rik taught us, but this time you tap it, revving up whatever it is, feeling it, and then you go to the outside of the eye, and then you go under the eye, really feeling it, and then you come to the sternum so that your fingers and your thumbs are right under your clavicle, right there where your collarbone, where it meets your sternum, and just tap that, really feeling it. And then you hold your wrist, kind of like where he was saying with the one that was for motion sickness, but you just hold onto your wrist, and this is where you do the opposite. Then you just let it all go. Take a few breaths. You can even imagine things being calmer. You can imagine the opposite if you wanted to. You can imagine being pain-free. You can imagine feeling confident and loved. And then you check in. So where is that pain? What's the emotional charge now? What is it on the 1 to 10? Did it go down at all? If it just went down just a little bit, do it again. And sometimes you have to do it for up to like 10 minutes if you're really working on something that's stuck in your system. Again, I use it like in the, whatever I'm doing. If I feel an emotion come up, like the one I was saying earlier, like, oh, I need to get stuff done, then even if I'm doing something, I will imagine myself tapping and holding. So that's it. This is it. It's super simple. I really love it because it's really simple. And I actually add in a little of the old stuff, but I'm not going to go into that and confuse us with it. So that's tapping, and I hope that will be helpful for you.
Karla, can you explain how that works?
Well, it actually works. It's based on neurolinguistics. It's based on acupuncture. It's based on a lot of different energy medicine techniques that have been combined. And somehow the tapping disrupts the neurological flow, and it somehow engages the vagal response, and it brings the parasympathetic nervous system more on board.
I see. It switches you
To the parasympathetic, to the rest.
I see.
So Rik's going to do the next.
So I'm going to do some breathing techniques that will help with stress. Breath work can be used as mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is a technique that's very, very widely used. And there's many forms of mindfulness that can be used to deal with stress. And I'm just going to bring up two. One is very, very simple, and therefore I think is very helpful. The first one I'm going to show you is very simple. You can use it in daily life very, very easily. At work or at the office or in your family situation, it can be used very easily. It's called the power breathing or the 4-8 breathing. And it just works by you mentally count your inhalations. So let's say you're inhaling for a count of 4. And when you do this, you kind of have to take a slightly bigger breath in order to get to 4. So you're counting to 4 as you inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have to have a slightly big amount of air taken in. And then you exhale for a count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so this is another technique for helping to move you into your parasympathetic nervous system. It's very effective for that. It's just by breathing in this way, it just clicks your body into a parasympathetic state. People use it all over the place for all different kinds of things, which I was saying. And it's very easy to use. So let's just try that. You can close your eyes if you want. You don't count out loud, you just count internally. Maybe I'll sort of guide you at times, but just breathe in for a count of 4. Slightly bigger breath than perhaps is normal. And then exhale slowly for a count of 8. And again, inhale for 4. And exhale for 8. Inhale for 4. And exhale for 8. So you don't want to force your breathing or become out of breath or anything like that. So if you find yourself getting out of breath or your breath has become too tense or labored, then just catch up on your breath and then start again. You don't have to worry that you've interrupted it by not continuing with the count exactly. You can just interrupt it and start again. And myself, I find this to be very, very calming. It's just such a simple little tool that you can use any place. Like Karla was talking, driving is a good example if you get cut off on the freeway or just really anywhere. I had a friend over last night and I was telling him about this technique and he decided he was going to get me all riled up. So he started insulting me to the best of his ability. And I just did the breathing while I was doing it. I felt it was just like water going off the back of a duck. And I was really impressed how well it worked, even though he was trying his best to get me riled up, and he was unsuccessful. So, try it, see if it works for you. I think it's really, really helpful. Then there's another kind of breath work, which is a little bit more of a kind of a meditation practice. And for this one, you want to get a felt sense of this point. It's called the Dantian point. It's 4 finger widths below the navel in the inside of the body towards the spine. So just take a few moments and try to really get a sense of where that is. If it helps, you can put your hand over that area of your body and feel your inhalations and exhalations moving your lower abdomen. Might help you get a better felt sense of where that point actually is. And then once you get a felt sense of where that is, try to imagine yourself breathing in and out from that point. As you breathe in, your lower abdomen will expand. And as you exhale, of course, your lower abdomen will contract. But by focusing on this area, this Dantian area, you really help to bring the body's energy down. As Karla was saying, and I was saying earlier, so many times when we become upset or stressed, energy rises up in the body, creating shoulder, neck tension, headaches, anxiety, insomnia, etc. And by bringing your energy down into this Dantian point, which is a point used for centuries by martial artists, meditation masters, Qigong masters, acupuncturists, the list goes on and on. It's a very, very important point. It's the anatomical center of our body in terms of top to bottom and front to back. So focus in on that and feel your breath expanding and contracting, and try to feel it as if it's coming from this point, this Dantian point. Let's take a few minutes to do that, just that. Being mindful of your breath with a special focus on this point in the interior of the body. Do it with your eyes open, your eyes closed. Bringing your energy and your attention and your mindfulness into this lower energy point in the body, all the while connecting it with the breath and the expansion and contraction that goes with the breath. And if your mind wanders, which it will, just simply go back to the technique. No judgment, no self-criticism. Just simply focusing to the best of your ability on this point and the expansion and contraction of the lower abdomen with the breath. And this practice alone would be more than enough. One can do it for a long period of time. For today's purposes, I'll keep it fairly abbreviated and move on to the second stage of the practice, which you can do if you feel like the first one has been successful or comfortable for you. And that's, once again, we're inhaling, feeling our abdomen expand, particularly around this Dantian point in the interior of the body. But now with each exhalation, you let your consciousness expand outward, outside your body. Breathing in with all attention on the breath, and then with the exhale, expanding your consciousness outside the body. Maybe filling the room you're in, your house. your city, the universe. You can expand this as far as your consciousness will allow you to go. Consciousness has no limits. Awareness has no limits. So we're just trying to relax into an open, spacious awareness. Completely relaxed. Letting go of thoughts of the past, worry about the future, judgment or self-critiquing in the present moment. Letting go of all of those and just focusing on the in-breath, and then with the out-bend, expanding your consciousness as far as you feel comfortable. When your mind wanders, just coming back to the breath again and again. So as I said, you could certainly do this for a much longer period of time than that, but for today's purposes, we're just trying to give a taste of these things. I know when I do this meditation, I feel much more expansive, much more relaxed, much more open. And these are all qualities which are kind of the antithesis of stress. So by cultivating these positive qualities, we're helping to deal with stress, not just by eliminating or pushing stress away, like Karla was saying, not always so helpful, but by trying to encourage positive qualities as a way to deal with stress.
So the last one, think about animals in your life. What do they do when they're stressed? Usually they, if they get stressed, they'll yawn but the big thing they do is they shake. They just, like a sheep shaking. So that's the practice. That's the tool, is just shaking. Let's just get up and we'll do a little shaking. So I usually start from my belly and I just start to wiggle and just wiggling and then letting it expand up into your chest and out into your arms, down into your legs and your knees and your ankles and your feet, and then it can come all the way up and it can be super vigorous, just shaking, just like a sheep getting all that wet, and just shaking. And it's really, really, really good for our bodies. It's kind of like the tapping, that it disrupts that tightness that we get into when we're stressed. So that's the last one. And I forgot when I was doing the tapping, I wanted to share that sometimes when Rik and I get in an argument, I'll actually be arguing with him, while I'm tapping. So these things can be used. I mean, he knows what I'm doing, but yeah, they can really be used. And then the other thing that I forgot to put in the opposites is one that is really, really helpful, is sometimes to take the stance of it. So just to review the opposites, we bring in something like, what does it feel like that I feel like I have tons of stuff that I need to do? So this might be the stance that I would get into. And then what would be the stance of me just, okay, everything's relaxed, I have what I need, and then going back and forth, and then letting both of them be there. So it might be something more like that. It's really interesting when you do the two opposites and then letting the third one come in. So you can do that by feeling different parts in your body, or you can actually do a stance. So, and all of these I wanted to share can be used with taking walks in nature, taking a bath, the things that we do that we naturally would do to calm ourselves and get ourselves into more of a parasympathetic part of our nervous system. We can do these things. We can tap while we're walking, or we can do the emotions, or we can hold points, while we're doing things. So we hope that some of these will inspire you, and if there's any questions, we can address those.
So I have a question about the opposites and both of them being there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
are we either in one or the other, the parasympathetic or
No.
we are?
We've got them all the time. They're like whoop whoop whoop.
Okay,
You know.
so both of them are operating at the same time.
Yes, but usually when one's really high, the other one
Yes.
has to go low. I mean, they're
I
kind of
see.
antagonistic to each
Right.
other.
Okay, so
Okay.
when we bring both of them together, I was finding that really hard.
It is hard. It's something that you have to practice. It's only within our awareness that we can expand to include both of these opposites. So our thinking mind, it's not something that we do normally. So
Yeah.
this is something you really, really have to practice. And that's why doing the stances sometimes can be helpful, or putting one emotion in one hand and one in the other and then letting them both be there. And it's extraordinary when you really let yourself do that. I mean, it's
So,
But I think you're right in the sense of about talking about expanding it, because at least in my experience, we tend to focus rigidly on either one or the other, and we have a hard time seeing the bigger perspective and the bigger picture.
Right.
And if we're able to see our emotions or our problems in a bigger perspective, a lot of times that will take the charge or the
Yeah.
difficulty out of it, because you're seeing it in a much more open-minded way.
I see.
That's really
A
key.
different perspective.
yeah, in a broader.
Both can.
Broader, expanded perspective.
I see.
Instead of being hyper, or we
It's
could
not
look
just
at it.
taking a third position, it's taking a bigger perspective,
Right.
which includes both of those.
Right.
I see.
It's like focusing on one note in music instead of having the whole symphony happening all at the same time.
I see.
So
Okay.
you're broadening it out. So it's a wonderful practice just for daily life, just so that we can be more open-minded. You know.
And not go from have it be either or.
Right.
Exactly. That's where we get into trouble when we do that black and white thinking.
Right. Right.
I saw a bumper
It's helpful.
sticker once that said, "The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open."
Yeah.
So the more we can expand our minds and see a broader perspective, we have more tools. We have more resources. We have more resources to deal with things. Like the definition of stress is that we don't have enough resources. So if we can bring in more resources, we're not going to be as stressed.
You're just much more relaxed when you have an open mind.
And we want to
Open, expanded mind. You're not just rigidly going from one to another. You're in a very relaxed way. You're expanding to include all of the different possibilities.
And you're not on one extreme or the other.
Exactly. Exactly.
right.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that takes practice.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
You were saying you want to kind of form a path like through the grass with these practices. So we need to practice.
Yeah,
We
you just
can't-
need to do them.
Yeah.
You know, I also teach baby massage. With babies, you want to massage them when they're calm and it's a positive experience. And then once that trail has been tread, then it becomes a positive thing. So if the baby's used to being massaged and likes it and it's a way to be with their parents, then when they get upset and the parent wants to do a massage, then it's associated with something positive.
I see.
So we want to be able to create these pathways that lead us back to a sense of security, a sense of comfort, a sense of confidence and feeling loved and cared for. So we actually have to create those.
It's like anything that you have to practice it to become better at it. Then you can be more relaxed in your application of it, and that'll be much more effective.
And neurologically, we are biased towards negativity. And we're biased that way because that's how humans evolved. The caveman that was watching the sunset and being really mellow was the one that got eaten. You know, the one that saw that the saber-toothed tiger was coming and was really on it, they lived. And so we actually have a physiological bias towards negativity. And we have to practice letting goodness in. We have to practice goodness and seeing the positive.
Oh my God.
Thank you, everyone.